Well, thank you so much for coming on the Leadermorphosis podcast, Anna and David. I'm really looking forward to talking to you about this wonderful film that you've made.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So maybe for the benefit of the listeners who haven't seen it, could you share a little bit about La Fageda and why it's a unique organization and how you came to make this film in the first place?
La Fageda is a yogurt making factory in Olot in Girona, in a really beautiful rural area of Catalonia. And I used to spend all my summers there because I'm half Catalan, so I always knew about it. And what's unique about this yogurt making factory is that all the workers suffer from different mental illnesses.
Yes, and and it started as a social enterprise by this amazing psychologist called Cristobal Colon. Basically, he was working in an asylum, which at those times, early 80s, they were in a pretty bad state. They hadn't had the reforms that the rest of Europe and the States had because of Franco and what have you. So when they started to kind of introduce some of these new ideas into the system, his idea was, I want to take 10 of the patients out and let's start a business. And so that's what they did. And initially they started off doing gardening and any jobs, and they grew and they changed. And because Cristobal, and we'll get onto this, is such an amazing entrepreneur, he kind of, all the avenues they tried out led to this one thing happening, which was the dairy farm, and then the yogurt brand, and then it's become the much loved presence of Catalonian life that you see in the supermarkets today. So, and obviously the idea with it is that what they're doing is actually providing jobs, meaning, and purpose for the workers, rather than making yogurt. So it could be anything that they do. The whole point is to make the work for the workers.
And I think what's unique is that it isn't sort of something for people who are suffering from mental illness to sort of pass the time. I think what's amazing is that it's a commercial success. So they rival Danone and Nestle. So it's kind of this unique combination that Cristobal Colon, which is Christopher Columbus, by the way, in English. His parents thought that's a good name. Well, they were called Columbus, and they thought, let's call him Christopher. That's his first name. Is that it's a commercial success. So that's what's unique. He's both an entrepreneur and a psychologist. It's this incredible combination, which is what makes La Fageda unique.
Yeah, it is an incredible combination. And I'm curious as well, like what to you was so important about making this film? Like, what did you want to say? What did you want to share in particular with the world in making this film?
Well, for me, I'd always sort of known about this place, having spent all my summers near it. And I suppose it was a sort of to have a great understanding about mental illness and to normalise it and what people go through. And yeah, each time I want to make sort of films that have got a social message or they've got some kind of purpose to them. So I think, you get to know the characters of people that work there, and you just realise that they're like you and me, that, there's no difference. They just had a little bit less support here or there. And so I think the social message was very important for me.
And I mean, for me, it's a really good story. It's a really good story, and it's one of those projects that because this started off as a personal thing. Anna wanted to make this film for years, and when she told me about Fageda and their story and Cristobal, and eventually I went there and saw myself. It was like, well, this is a no-brainer. If you're going to do a personal project which involves a lot of investment of time and love and disappointment and highs and lows, all of it, then find the right story to do that with, because it'll destroy you otherwise if you don't believe in it. And so this was just all those stars aligning and everything coming good to mean that yeah, we could do it for the long haul and do it in such a way that we could film it intimately. We could make this happen as you with your podcasts, with a crew of me and Anna. That's all. Sound, camera. Any way we can get that rolling for a period of days, we would just go, and we would stay, and we would just be there, and in a way that you couldn't if there were other people involved, or if there was a commercial thing that you were just purely motivated by. It's a gig, So that's.
Yeah, I suppose we were embedded in La Fageda because we did it over various years. Actually, every time we had a break between sort of paid gigs, and we became part of their family, and all the workers they're like our friends. They all knew us, the sort of quirky, half English, half Catalan lot that keep on coming. And I think what's radical and what's unique about this place is that those who are suffering mental illnesses, we shouldn't shut them out of society. We should actually integrate them. The more you integrate them, that's probably the best cure, isn't it? And so I'm always into sort of radical or different ways of doing them. And also, it's not just mental illness; it's all about doing better business and giving people meaning, so that they have intrinsic meaning in their work. Their work. It's not just about pleasing shareholders. And we all want work with meaning. We all want to go above and beyond pleasing shareholders. That I think is really important.
So as filmmakers, that was what this job was for us. It was work with meaning. So that's why we made it.
Yeah, and that's very much what drew me to inviting you onto the podcast, because I saw a little taster of the film. Must have been, I don't know, four years ago or something in London. And it wasn't finished then, but I remember being so struck by, for me, my interest is the future of work and making work more human, making it more purposeful, and really involving people and sort of, treating people with dignity, really. Like, I think we infantilize people in organizations generally. And I think we infantilize people with mental illnesses as well. So it's really beautiful, I think, in the film to see people treated with dignity and respect and doing work and finding purpose and meaning in it, and sort of involving them and talking with them both about their work and also, with their therapists, and sort of, working through how they can live, really, and supporting them in finding autonomy, I guess you could say. I think
that's 360 view. I think that's what they say. So it's, their work, where they're going to live, what they, do in their spare time. They look at the individual from all perspectives. So, one worker might have a crisis in the afternoon, therefore they can't work. Then they have to go and look at the psychotherapist and be looked after by them. But still the business keeps on going. So they manage to do, and, maybe in a more inverted commas normal business, you won't have someone having a breakdown, but you might have someone that's got to rush off to pick up kids because something's happened or something. So there's flexibility and trust in your worker as well, as opposed to presenteeism, isn't it, where you have to be there on it.
Well, that's what we're finding this year. Has really thrown into stark relief the idea of being present in a place, and that being the indicator of how much work you're doing, or the value of your work. That's gone out the window completely now, which has thrown up issues and problems and lessons to be learned going forward as well. But it's hard to imagine going back for a lot of these organisations to how things work.
I mean, the other aspect also about work, which is interesting, is that we all venerate in society the alpha worker, or the people that are the most brilliant. And actually, we need everything in society. And actually, it's probably more beneficial sometimes in some jobs to not have the alpha worker. That, someone maybe who's older would be far more happy to be working in that shop or in that library. And that people bring different things. So, I'm now I work at Directors UK. I do a lot with them. It's a body for directors. And we're now doing a lot of work on disability, because there's lots of disabled people that are directors and want to get work, basically. And there's ways of doing it. And there's a government grant that helps to give support for doing this. And we need different perspectives and different voices. And the more diverse our workforce, the more innovative we can be in what we're making, what we're telling, or what product we make.
I think it's it's important for organizations to embrace the fact that a workforce is a diverse organism, if you like. There isn't one type of work that gives everybody meaning. It could be anything. So the guys at La Fageda, a lot of it is factory work. It's packing. It's watching a machine do a thing, and if it doesn't do a thing, then you turn a screw or throw a lever, and it starts doing it again. It's not suddenly this is an amazing workplace it's a factory, and it makes a foodstuff that has to be of a certain standard and has to be shipped out, delivered to people that are expecting it. So all of that goes on, but this sort of elusive thing of meaning, it means something different to whoever you ask, and so an organization that is nimble and alive to the fact that a workforce is full of different people searching for different meanings that will all be fulfilled in different ways. That's, I think, something that La Fageda does do. If you look at the things they do away from the workplace, the extracurricular activities, the drama groups, the art classes, all of these things kind of take it away. It's more than the work. You're then becoming a community. You're then becoming a team. I don't know. You would have better words for this, Lisa, I'm sure. But do you know what I'm saying? It's as Anna says, it's 360. It's holistic, and it's not just about the work. Although the work is the thing that allows everything else to happen.
And I think also in this case, the product is something that everyone's very proud of. So it's yogurts, which is, it's in a beautiful place in a forest. The cows are looked after. They put bark for the cows to listen to because that relaxes the cows. So it's a very natural product. So it's something that everyone feels very proud about to be making. And it's slightly more expensive than, say, Nestle or Danone, but it's that much more homemade and delicious and things like that. So it's something that everyone believes in.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. I always love stories where you can say, isn't this wonderful and noble and so on, but when it makes business sense and it's incredibly successful company, and they produce a huge number of products as well. It's not just like isn't that nice, but it's like it works too. That it gets good results, and I believe that that's because when you engage people's whole selves and you create that sense of community, it does create a different kind of mindset, I think, of like, we are in this together and we're co-responsible for this organization. It's more than just clocking in and out,
Absolutely. But it's not an easy workforce to manage. They have a lot of different needs. They have a lot of fluctuations in mood and all of these things. That means that the team, or the different tiers of team management and supervision and support, they work in an almost it's not instinct because they've learnt it over many years and they've developed processes but it's so smooth and so it looks effortless. It's not effortless, but you wouldn't notice the amount of work that really is going on all the time just to keep the plate spinning and keep the workers working.
And going back to what you're saying about this, I think it's all about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, isn't it? That if you want to get the best, even if you're the most cynical person in the world, if you want to get the best work out of your workforce, they need to have intrinsic motivation. It can't just be about what they're being paid. They've got to believe in what they're doing.
Well, one of the early lessons for Colon was the buy-in from the workers had to be completely upfront and obvious and built into the constitution of the place. That's why it became a cooperative. there was, they didn't start off that way. It started off being business and people got paid. But it soon became clear that the way to really get people involved and committed was to actually pony up and say, okay, this is ours. It's not just words. It's not just a manager standing in front of you and saying, hey, team, aren't we? No, this is ours. And so that's the model they chose, and that's the one they stuck with, up until very recently when they've become a foundation. That's another story.
I'm curious about what has the reception been? I understand that you've been submitting the film to various festivals and things like that. How have people been responding, and has it been inspiring conversations? Are people sort of thinking, hey, we could do this in more contexts?
Yeah, well, we showed it initially, a shorter version of the film, in Olot, where the Fageda is itself, with all the workers. And that was probably one of the hardest, because you think, gosh, will they be okay with seeing themselves represented? But everyone was absolutely delighted and so proud to see themselves and to have their story validated and told. And then it came out on TV3, Spanish TV, was very successful. I came out on a TV program on TV talking about it. And then it got lots of press. And then now the feature doc version has gone, we sent it all around the world. So it's had really good responses from the festivals that it's played in. It's been selected for a lot of festivals. We're kind of, it's weird because this is the whole festival circuit this year is not a festival circuit. It's laptops and it's people doing it's Zoom Q&As, and so the feeling of sitting there with an audience and watching your film, we've been robbed of that by this virus, which is really horrible. So but when we did sit with an audience and watch the film, it was with the workers of the Fageda when they had their premiere, and it was so joyful, and lots of laughs, lots of tears, and it was wonderful. So there couldn't have been a better audience to watch this film with than the workers. So that was pretty good. I have to say that was a high. But as far as people that see this film, particularly if they have a family experience of mental health, or the comments and kind words that we've had from those people have been amazing and just genuinely, really kind of, wow, very moving. And that's been gratifying. And it has played in a few specifically mental health festivals, as well. The Scottish Mental Health Arts Festival was one. And yeah, that's validation as well, because you feel that you are telling a real story authentically and not sugarcoating it. People are seeing their own experiences up there on the screen, regardless of whether they were actually part of making the film or not. And that's really special. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some really beautiful and moving scenes, and I can see now what you said about it being very intimately shot, like following two of the workers on their road trip and, and being in a home with someone as they paint, or, really getting a window into really tough questions and challenges about, where will you live when you're...
You're back? Are you back?
Yeah, you froze. Oh dear. My computer says system overload.
Well, we are quite a bit to handle.
That's never happened before. How strange. Let me just see where it got up to. Interesting.
Is it your end or our end, do you think?
I think it's my end, because I'm recording in Zoom, but also in GarageBand at my end, and it's GarageBand that said system overload. I can start recording again, but I'm sort of wondering if it's going to do that again.
How many minutes should it be done? Just out of interest, because it might have a time file size limit or something.
Well, we had been recording for 20 minutes, but I've often recorded, an hour and a half long conversations here. So it has never done that before.
Okay. Well, then let's see if it does it again.
Well, also, at least we're also recording in Zoom. It's not as good quality through Zoom. I know you're recording at your end as well.
Yeah.
But at least we have two options. So let's try recording again here. And I guess we'll just have to see. Okay.
I'm really annoyed I chose these headphones.
And where was I? What was I saying? I was talking about intimacy and following.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can't quite remember where I was going with that.
Well, I mean, no, we can talk it, but I can answer to that if you want. So I think the way in which we filmed was very intimate. We used a very small camera, which is, David will got to talk a lot more about that. And it's just two of us in the team. So it sort of, it enabled us to, just sort of turn up and people not notice us very much and to sort of be part of what they were doing.
I think so prior to shooting, obviously we did a bit of research and we familiarized ourselves with other films kind of in the genre. And we were very aware that a lot of the stuff we were looking at, it was filming the people like they were wildlife. It was like from a distance and a long lens, and they wouldn't necessarily know they were mic'd up. And so they'd gone for that sort of covert route for getting this. And we just thought, well, we don't want to do that. We want to be as close and as embedded and as familiar as possible. So there was no sort of artifice of pretending there wasn't a camera there, and pretending that we weren't there, because it became obvious very early on that the way that they were relating to Anna and me meant that everybody felt very protective of us. And they wanted to involve us, and because my Catalan is non-existent, and as is my Castilian, I was kind of like the mute, the mute guy. Everybody else was kind of I was the least smart guy in the room. So that suddenly meant that people were really protective of me and really kind of involving and making sure that I was okay, getting what I wanted and so on. And we were communicating with like sign language, gestures, and smiles, and obviously, it got better as I improved. But that fostered a very kind of nurturing, supportive, collegiate endeavour. And it really did. And I think it came across all the way through. You never feel that we're intruding. The viewer, camera, it's never intrusive and it's never uncomfortable. It's always honest, which is I think that's a real achievement, filming. As far as the documentary is concerned, you very rarely see that. So yeah, and I think that's what people respond to.
Yeah, I think honesty is exactly the right word. It's not. It would have been easy, perhaps, to create something very cheesy and uplifting. And there are very uplifting and moving moments, but it is a very honest portrayal, and sort of following someone alongside them of what it's like to live with a mental illness. And I think it's a testament to the film that you managed to do that.
Well, I mean, interestingly, we didn't necessarily know that was the film we were going to make. It evolved over time. because we had the luxury of having that time. Initially, our pitch would have been more Colon-centric. It would have been more about the nuts and bolts, maybe, of and so this is a successful business, and blah, blah, blah. And a lot more kind of big picture, if you like. And it was only as we were shooting it that the characters shone through and actually became, this is about people. It's not about, yes, it's got one great protagonist, but this place is not just his story.
And I think that the workers like Mireia, one of the characters who is gay, but ends up actually she's transitioning at the moment. She wanted to tell us her story. She just came up and said, "Hey, this is me. Tell my story." And I think that they feel validated, and that they're the first to sort of joke about themselves. Like, for example, the two chaps we went to Lord's with, they're very sweet. One of them, I think, is obsessive compulsive, and he goes, "Well, that's why I love doing another take with you. Every time you say let's do another take, I'm delighted because he likes doing things again and he likes repeating." And they were so, because actually, one thing is that whenever you're, now I'm working disability, you have to be very wary about the terminology that you use, and in mental health you do. And I used to get so worried about whether you say someone's suffering from a mental illness as opposed to that they, so it's not a permanent thing, and so. And it's quite right to be careful with the vocabulary we use in these things. But in terms of the workers, all these people, they don't care. They're quite happy to say I'm mad or whatever. I mean, they're the first to say it. So, so it's sort of frankness and being open about themselves.
Yeah.
Well, having said that, I think it is worth spending some time talking about Cristobal, and as you said, he is this kind of remarkable combination of entrepreneur and psychologist. And it's quite common when I'm interviewing people on this podcast that, very progressive radical organizations, there is this sort of unique visionary founder that does something, very different, sees the world differently. And Cristobal certainly seems to be one of those people. What is, having spent that time with him, what have you learned about him as an individual, and what do you think makes him so unique?
Well, he's got this thing in that you sort of admire him, but you slightly fear him, which various bosses I've had who I really admire have that in a way. He's quite distant and hard to get to know. Like his wife is very charismatic, very personable, very sort of easy. He's a leading figure. And actually, years ago, I remember working on feature films, and my boss, he would never have lunch with a team. He always kept himself a bit separate. So there's something about Cristobal Colon is that, he's always a little bit separate. He keeps his distance. But to do that kind of thing, I think he's obviously got lots of guts. Because he just basically, I think he was always radical throughout his life, and then just to sort of take a load of patients from an asylum and go and look for work. I think he's got a strong belief system and guts. He can take risks and just do things.
Yeah, and he's he'd be the first to kind of say that he's just kept going. That's there have been a lot of mistakes on their journey, and they've just been able to keep going after each mistake. They've thought again. They've come back with another plan. The world or the universe has allowed them another go at it. Has allowed them some other opening that can be the escape hatch from the problem that they were facing at that particular time. So it's very difficult because you want to think that these things are possible and repeatable and achievable by others. You want there to be a model, and you want there to be a kind of a learnable model, teachable, that you can just transfer. And that's what he did with Dearly Love as well. He wants, so the work that he's doing with his foundation is to get other social entrepreneurs in, regardless of what the business idea is, and to give them principles and lessons that they've learned methods of approaching their enterprise that could be helpful. And it doesn't have to be for mentally ill people. It could be Colon's idea is that it's any marginalized workforce. It could be refugees, or it could be ex-prisoners, or it could. That's his interest, but it doesn't have to be that. So he's very much into the principles being transferred and the ideas or the thought of the possibility that capitalism is a potentially good thing when done right, when done in a sympathetic and an inclusive way. So that's the thing. But you always come back to this key issue of he's a remarkable man.
However, he's the first. He'll never say that I'm a guru, that I'm amazing. He doesn't like these kind of sort of conclusions about himself. And when in the whole sort of transition to making a foundation, basically because he wants to retire, is to try and get rid of the cult personality of the brand, because it does have a cult personality, and to try and make it sustainable without him. But it is a bit of a contradiction, because you're right, it started because of him, and because he is so special, and because he does have this aura and this confidence. And he also says in Spanish that he's got mala leche, which is quite hard to translate, but I don't know what it means, like balls or not giving a toss or something. He's quite happy to have a go at someone if they're not helping him finance something, or to just do his own thing. He's like an enfant terrible, or he's got a very strong streak personality, convinced in his ideas and guts. I think that's what he'll say. He says balls. Yeah, I mean that's probably, So you've got someone who's got a very strong egalitarian ideology, and who's got a lot of guts as well, and is prepared to take risks. That's that kind of little boiling point. And I do think he's got there is a personality about him. There is an aura, although he says there isn't. This thing that when I go and speak to him, I feel really impressed, but also a bit intimidated, a bit scared. This kind of aura about him.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of, yeah. I think that's sort of normal, in somebody that you admire a lot to understand something. That is remarkable. But yeah, I mean, Anna obviously knows him better than I do because of the conversations that they've had. But my take on him, having spent the time that I have, is that he doesn't relish being the front man that he has to be, but he knows that that's his role. He has to do that, and so his instincts are great for business, and he knows that as his strength. He knows that his nose is very, very good, and he takes no nonsense. If something doesn't smell right to him, he will absolutely go with his gut. But as far as the other stuff goes, it's a bit embarrassed about it, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think he's probably reserved and doesn't like this sort of being attributed as a sort of godlike figure, or sort of guru that solved everything. He wants to normalize it, really.
But of course, the place he is the head of the family. If you want to think of it, as we were saying earlier, it's more than a business, which means he's more than a CEO. He is father figure. He is kind of the all-seeing eye. Yeah.
I mean, and the footage you've got of them sort of in the 80s in a little van leaving the asylum and just going to look for work. So there's a real sort of outsider or sort of adventurer about him. Sort of seizing the opportunity to make change. And the thing is, we do need leaders in our world, and we think how few leaders there are nowadays. Impressive people that you really look up to and that want to change things and that have got really good values, at their hearts. He does, for example, he's never wanted La Fageda to grow too much. It's not about making more money. It's about keeping it intact as a family and small. So,
they don't want to export, and they don't want La Fageda factories in every city in the world at all. They want that factory to provide the work for those people in that area. And if other people want to start their own businesses in other places, then that's fine. But that business is doing exactly what that business was set up to do, which was to find work with meaning for people with mental illnesses there.
And what's incredible is La Garrocha, the region, there's no one who's got mental illness who hasn't got a place of work there in that region.
If they want
it. So he's basically covered the whole area. So that's incredible.
Yeah, it's so interesting hearing you describe these kind of paradoxical qualities of, having a strong conviction in something and not being afraid to stand for that and sort of defend that. And at the same time, kind of, almost shunning this sort of guru status and not wanting to be the hero archetypal leader. And I think that's often common with these, progressive organizations, that kind of humble visionary. And it can be really tricky in terms of succession. There's a lot of cases where organizations, after the founder or the kind of visionary CEO has left, it's sort of reverted back to something, or it's sort of crumbled. So when I was watching the documentary, I was sort of nervous for La Fageda, thinking like, wow, if he's stepping away, he's leaving a hole there. And I wonder who will step into that. And I don't know if the intention is for that to not be one person, but for more to be a collective leadership, but that can also be tricky. So I have some nervousness about that, even though, like you, I would like to believe that, we don't need to rely on these unique individuals, that these things can be replicated or sort of inspire other examples. And yet it seems to often be people who are kind of just born this way, that just see the world a little bit differently, have a unique combination of characteristics that make them the right DNA to create these remarkable projects.
Well, yeah, that skill set is it's broad in a way, but one of the most important things that Colon has done is that he has used other people's talents and other people's wisdom, and he's not been a micromanager at all in that sense. He's got help from wherever he can get help, and he's been very good at corralling those skills and those. How do you set up a yogurt factory from scratch? How do you do that? He didn't know, but he found someone who did, and those guys became thick as thieves for a while. And then, do you know what I mean? So I guess that's kind of humble in a way. It's sort of the opposite of ego, saying, "No, I can't do this. I need you to, and I need you, and I need you, and I need you, and I need you. Then we can all do this." So yeah, that's.
I mean, that's what they say, don't they? That you're always supposed to hire people that are better than you, and that's the mark of a good leader as well. That being a secure person will try and do the opposite. But yeah, exactly. So he's always, when he needed that expertise, he went and sought it and got it. But yeah, I mean, I think in my life, I've probably can say in one hand sort of inspirational leaders I've worked for. I think it's quite rare. I think they are rare because you need a unique combination of appetite for risk, conviction, not caring what the people think about you, just going it alone.
But good instincts as well.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you could be very evil.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you get the opposite example, don't you? Like people like Trump who also don't care very much what people think about them, but they should do.
It's a fine line between a Colon and a Trump.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm sort of thinking about, in some ways, I see La Fageda as a real inspiration for organizations. Generally, it's kind of, you could say, like at one extreme of, creating a place where people living with mental illnesses can find meaningful work. And that's a very, specific context. But all organizations around the world are populated by people, many of whom are living with mental illnesses of varying degrees. And we often don't talk about that. It's often very stigmatized. And we don't sort of encourage people to talk about emotions or mental health or struggles. It's shifting a little bit now. But it seems to me like a kind of inspiring example of, if it's possible to create a successful yogurt company, in this context, surely it's possible in kind of, for want of a better term, mainstream organizations, that we learn from some of these ways of relating to each other, our fellow human beings, and talk about mental health, and that we can actually free up resources and opportunities for people to get support and for that to be part of work, that it doesn't need to be separate.
Yes.
Yeah, I was speaking the other day with a colleague who works with a lot of people who are disabled, and she was sort of saying that she starts the conversation at, or when they start working, what do you all need? And that applies to everyone, whether you've got, whether you need an adaptation because you've got a disability, or whether it's me that's got kids and I might have to leave really early, or someone that's got, so it's sort of having a very open conversation. What do you need to make your work easier? Or, what's going on in your life, so that everyone feels comfortable where they are, and, sort of flexible workplace, really. And I mean, I want it to be that way from a humanitarian perspective, but I always say the same thing from a Machiavellian point of view. People will work harder for you if they feel looked after, whether that's on a film shoot and make sure they've got a nice hotel and plenty of food, and you're looking after them, to letting them work from home if they have to, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that this one size fits all approach, it really doesn't make sense, and especially now that work is more atomized, or certainly our version of work. In that, I don't know what the guidance has been where you are, Lisa, but here it's been stay at home and work from home, and unless you can't work from home, in which case go into the office. So a lot of the offices are very empty. If you go to Zone 1 in the centre of London, it hasn't recovered. People haven't flocked back to fill, their office space, to get back behind their desks. They just haven't done it, and it's that means that everybody's experience of work is now a lot more individual, and is very much about their own personalities and their own lives. And so the management of that in such a way that it enhances as opposed to detracts, I think is going to be the way forward for most organisations, many organisations.
Yeah, working from home means I can marinate a chicken, I can do a bit of yoga, I can do work, I can suddenly all those other things which are important to me. And I remember ages ago reading.
It's true, she does all of these things. she's marinating a chicken as we speak.
I remember years ago reading about Pixar, who deemed as sort of very innovative in various ways. But one thing they had was on university, they had Pixar University on Fridays, where it's a day when you could do anything unrelated to your job, because that would just make you a richer worker, as it were. So allowing your staff to grow by doing other pursuits makes them more interesting at work, and be able to sort of deliver more, or have more perspectives, or it makes it a more vibrant place.
So you have to trust your workers that time for themselves is going to be invested wisely. They are going to do that, and I think in most cases, yes, absolutely. But the mindset of management is always suspicion. There's always been, can I put a little bit of can I put some spyware into your Zoom thing to see how many minutes and how many things you're actually like? Well, that is certainly, that's still there, but that must generate more resentment than efficiency savings, I would have thought. I don't know. You tell me, Lisa.
Yeah. Well, it strikes me that in a way, your film and this story to me is a bit of a metaphor for a paradigm shift that we're seeing in work generally. If you think about this industrial paradigm of work that we've had, which is a bit like, those institutions that we see footage of early in the film that are prison-like, where people are sitting, in a courtyard with nothing to do. It's very sort of grey and monotonous, soulless, you could say. And then they're sort of set free, and Cristobal comes along and creates this, and it couldn't be more perfect, actually, the metaphor, because it is this like beautiful forest, and he creates this organization and this almost like this garden, where people are not treated like homogenous machine parts, but seen as, plants, and everyone needs different conditions to grow and thrive and flourish. But they're all kind of working towards this common purpose together. And so it's, I think, a beautiful metaphor for what I hope is also happening generally in the world of work, that we are realizing, as you say, not just because it's nice, but also because it is better, it gets better results if we create conditions where people can bring their whole selves to work, if we can create conditions where we invite all kinds of minds, all kinds of creativity and soul and heart and, all different perspectives rather than just the kind of dominant perspectives, inviting in marginalized perspectives, because that will add richness and new perspectives and innovation and all of that stuff. So I think it's a very apt story for this podcast and the conversations that I'm trying to share with the world, that this is an example that we can hold up as like, this is what's possible when you have faith, when you have a belief in humanity and what's possible when we kind of collaborate in a context where we can all feel safe and encouraged to be who we are, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm sold. I'll watch it.
No, I think you put it really well there. Yeah, no, I think it's wonderful, and that's what gives us, sort of the struggle to carry on and to keep fighting, because there are examples of really amazing things. The world can be a very dark place, but also there are incredible people fighting for change and doing, extraordinary things, and that's what keeps me going, really.
Yeah. Well, I guess on that note, what would you like to leave listeners with? We have people listening to the podcast who are, you could say, kind of rebels and radicals themselves, who are trying to reinvent their organizations or create more meaningful environments for them and their colleagues. What would you like to leave them with, or what words of wisdom could you share from your experience with this story and as filmmakers and storytellers?
You're not alone. I think that's really important. There is a movement. It was nothing a while ago. It's now something, and it's growing. And there are more people sharing their stories, sharing their problems, helping each other, mentoring each other. All of this stuff is happening. So keep going, reach out, and connect, and talk to as many people as you can talk to. And if your idea doesn't work, do another idea. Try again. Your principles are sound. If they're not sound, change them.
I think have the guts, I suppose. I mean, it's little things that everyone knows anyway, that, we need to embrace a diverse workforce and make sure and care for our workers. Everyone knows that, but I suppose just have the guts, because, we all have great ideas, but to actually go out and do them and just get out there, I suppose. Have the guts.
Yeah. It's... you don't want to be glib about any of this stuff. If you're starting up a business or if you're running a company, that's a huge responsibility, massive responsibility, and it comes with 100 decisions to be made every day, and that are, you're going to get some of them wrong, and some of them are not going to have nice options. There's going to be, do you want to do crappy option A or crappy option B? And you've got to flip the coin and take one. And so I think just take heart from the fact that everybody doing what you're doing is going through the same thing as you. Colon went through those times when it looked like there were no good options, and all he had were his guiding principles. Those are that was the star that he could keep his compass fixed on, and that's what got him through, with very little support and kind of innovating every step of the way on both the mental health front and the workforce management front. But it was the principle that's what meant he could sort of steer a course that he could ultimately be happy with. And I think that's probably the crucial thing. Get that right, and the day-to-day of the business, you can at least be at peace with the course that you set.
Values, and the last thing I was going to say is also that it's difficult. Making this film was difficult. Running La Fageda is difficult. But but it's just tough. It's really tough. It was difficult for us. It was, Yeah. So I mean, it's that's downer. That's really down.
And so what you
end with what I said, which was the positive end. It won't make people give up.
But what got you through then when it was difficult for you? Did you have principles that?
Oh, we really believed in the project. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of. I mean, it was such an easy thing to sort of. You have to do what do you call it when you try and sell an idea. To pitch. It's such an easy thing to pitch. I mean, you have to read my notes because it was part of us. We loved the idea so much. So I suppose, that's one of the good things to really be in love with your project, because if you're going to go through it thick and thin, and there'll be easy times and good times, whatever, to really believe in what you're doing and values, have good values at the heart.
Yeah, all of that.
There we go. It's a nice positive to end on.